What do George Washington, Buzz Aldrin, Mark Twain, and Akash Katakam all have in common? They're all Freemasons. Akash walked the red carpet, but craved deeper secrets. Can a biotech expert, actor, and pickup artist become a real-life Indiana Jones?
I've been living like National Treasure, the movie, going to different libraries, going to graveyards, looking at old maps, all this type of stuff, you know?
Let's stay curious and learn about the inside story of the National Treasure journey to find the Freemason past, life as a successful indie actor, and more, involving Akash Katakam on this episode of Learning With Lowell. What are some of these other projects that you're working on then? Like, where's your focus? And, I don't know, I was gonna make a joke about like taking care of your kids, that we, but hopefully you still don't have any. Or not, if you want kids.
Not kids that I'm aware of, no kids that I'm aware of. I've been working, actually, the office that I'm in right now, I'm at the Plainfield Masonic Temple. And so as we've talked about in the past, I'm a Mason, I have no qualms about it. And I'm the secretary of the place, right? So I've been really digging into our history and writing our history. This organization is over 200 years old. And so in the first 100 years, they really wrote down a really nice compiled version of the history from 1817 to 1917. But from 1917 to 2017, there's not much written on the history. So but there's been a lot of activity. They erected a temple that was 4 stories and a basement, so 5 stories. They financed it back in the 1920s and through the sale of bonds and getting loans from banks and whatever, a whole host of ways of financing the actual building. And it's still here today, and I'm working on actually restoring the building with a couple of the guys here. We got 2 years of funding from the state of New Jersey to designate it as a historic place on the National Registry of Historic Places. And so I've just been really digging deep into, all right, how did they first build this place? And just trying to get a bit of the essence of those guys who come before me, and really learn what did they do, how did they do things, and who were they, So that's really what I've been doing, is a lot of digitizing of old records. But then also I've been living like National Treasure, the movie, going to different libraries, going to graveyards, looking at old maps, all this type of stuff, and it's just fulfilling, doesn't even begin to describe it. There's a level of like, I feel like I could work on this stuff all day, every day, and still not get enough.
At any point in this conversation, if you find value in it, please subscribe. It is hugely beneficial, and it tells Google and everyone out there that this is content worth watching. Thank you for everyone thus far who has commented, liked, subscribed, and told their friends.
So that's really what I've been up to this summer, for the most part, at least the past month for sure. But really, if I go back, end of June was kind of when I was starting up with some of this stuff, and I just had a little bit more time to work on this, and that's really what I've dedicated my time to recently. So yeah, I've got a couple acting projects here and there interspersed, but right now for me, it feels like this is the time for me to do my research, if you will, to be able to educate myself for how to move forward on this whole thing, and how to be of sufficient support and guidance to guys who come after me, but then also the guys who are around me who maybe haven't gotten a chance to go through some of these archives and whatnot, to be a beacon of, oh yeah, we actually did that back in 1953, and this is exactly what happened then, or what have you, be able to refer, just being like a historian to some degree, if you will. So that's actually, I got a book right here. Is what I was working on a little earlier. It's like, you can kind of see it's focused from, it's the historical register of the lodge. So it details every member, what was their occupation, when were they born, when did they die. Oftentimes you'll get like the obituary of the guy. So like, this is whatever, it gives like the newspaper clipping of like, what did the guy do in his life and whatnot. And I'm just digitizing all that, getting it all online, and it's just, for God forbid something happens and there's a fire or something like that, which has been recorded in a lot of this history multiple times. I mean, like 3 or 4 fires. Like, well, at least I'd love to know that some of this stuff isn't, the information is not lost, even if the material isn't there. So
it'd be interesting to when you're done compiling it all, to then it'd be interesting to like you have like that corpus of knowledge in your head, if you would go and like meet some of the family members, even if it's like descendants, and say, "Oh, do you remember your grandfather? He had this obituary. Like, what's your stories of him?" And just, like, I wonder what else you'd get, like what other elements that like no one knows about, because it's a bit of a game of telephone. It's also like a kind of an echo in terms of like the obituary is kind of. I think they're nice and they say nice things about people, but I wish it was like a dark obituary. Like, tell us it all. Like this person suffered from alcoholism for like 10 years. The butler was like clean for 8. Here's some stuff that they did to get better on that. Like real sense of like the weight of a life. I think it'd be really cool. And I could see it as like a little YouTube series that you do, like behind the scenes with Akash. And I'd watch that. I watched the shit out of that. If you just if you like took it and like went around and did stuff like that. But even just doing National Treasure in your backyard, I think that'd be fun too. But do you have interest in doing that type of background? It'd be pretty exhaustive. I think it'd take a lot of your time and energy though.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean, even just doing this, like takes a lot of time and energy. You know, like this is not a job for one person. This is a job for like a team of people, right? Because there's like. So at this particular temple, there was up to 13 organizations, and that's excluding like the guy, like the organization that actually built this place. And so there's probably about 15 organizations that I'm like, you got to go through the history of. Each of these organizations was easily 80 years old minimum. So then like you got to go through every month's minutes books for each of these things. But then, so it's just like a stupid level of information to try to digest, let alone trying to read this, like the script, because these guys wrote in script, and it's like sometimes the ink pen was like watercolor based, which kind of like it's almost see-through, like it's just very faint and faded, versus other times you can tell like, okay, these actually really like nice permanent ink, right? I got like a quill pen around here somewhere that I've just been like playing around with that too, just to like get a sense of like, I don't know, you work on the stuff, you see it, you kind of imitate it a little bit. Like they still have some of the ink in the old the nibs of the quills. Like I found them the other day. I'm like, I'm messing around with the stuff that they left here, you know, which is really, really cool. I just feel like a little kid in that regard. Like, it's almost like playing with like your grandfather's old whatever, you know.
It sounds fun. I can see the excitement behind it, because it's like
this for example, like look at the safe. Like that's a huge thing. I only saw those things in like cartoons. I didn't even think they were real, you know, but there's a few of them around here, you know. So, and the thing weighs a ton. Like there's no way that like, I don't even know how they got it up here, you know, even with the elevator or whatnot, you know, it's stupid heavy. So
yeah, I think it's surprising to me how often there's a lot of stuff in movies where, okay, like basically there are things from my childhood that I thought were just made up, like what you're saying about the safe, and I'm routinely made fun of for thinking these things. Like, you know, the ice cream truck, I didn't think those were real. And then one day I'm at a park, and there's like da, 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 you know, the ice cream song is like, what the heck, someone's enjoying their day, right? Then all the kids are like, ice cream's like, guys, stop, there's no ice cream truck, it's just made up, don't worry, calm down. And they're like, no, there's ice cream truck, it's coming. It's like, guy, okay, come on, has no one told you like Santa Claus doesn't exist? Like, stop, there's no ice cream truck coming. And like the ice cream truck turns the corner and starts coming down the road, and they're like, see, it's an ice cream truck, you're an idiot, lol. And like, why have I been lied to my whole life? I lived in the middle of freaking nowhere. I didn't know ice cream trucks were real. But there's like a whole host of things that I've been lied to about. But yeah, so it made me think of that. Like, how often are there things like that in life where we were like made to believe through TV, cinema, otherwise, that they weren't actually real? Which is kind of fun. So it's interesting to hear you dig in and see what's like fact from fiction. Because if without your research, like no one would know anything.
Yeah, so I mean, there are oftentimes like there's like these general stories, right? I'll hear from the guys. Oh, well, this place used to be, because Plainfield back in the 1940s and 50s, like after the Great Depression, was the richest city in the entire United States, like period. You know, it ended up the race riots in 1967, in the summer of 1967, after what was his, Lyndon B. Johnson. He had his whole Great Society, but then it didn't really work, and segregation was still a big thing, civil rights movements and whatnot. There was race riots all across the country. Detroit was one of the worst cities hit. Newark was pretty badly hit. But the spillover from Newark hit into Plainfield. And like I mentioned, Plainfield's was like, you look at the building, if you walk around the city of Plainfield, you look at the buildings and they're gorgeous, but they're like so decrepit because like they're 1950s workers, you know what I mean? Yeah. So, but anyways, the city ended up going from the richest city in the country to be like in the 80s. It's like, you don't want to go to Plainfield because you'll get shot. you know.
Mm.
And it's on its way of becoming better and whatnot, but there's still a lot of that around, you know. So it's really interesting of a case study because a lot of New Jersey history is just like very much intertwined with United States history, you know, like Great Depression. It's like just see it like I'm reading through it like in the minutes books. I'm like, oh yeah, that's the Great Depression right there. I didn't even need to look at the years, but you can kind of get a sense of like what's going on, which it's like that's the interesting thing is like trying to read through the lines, you know, like because in an official business minutes capacity, you're only going to read so much, but you also need to know the context of like what was going on in the area at the time or what all these types of things, you know. So that's the tougher part, especially in some of the early stuff, like in the 1800s. Like forget about doing 1800s newspaper research was just like super tough, you know, like I couldn't really find anything, but you find stuff, you know, so it's really interesting. So I never really thought of myself to be like, okay, historical research, blah, 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 but now I feel like I'm writing a book. Like I'm writing a manuscript. I'm on like page like 25, 26 single spaced right now, you know, and it's like, it's there, you know, so I don't know.
Yeah, I could see it being a book. I could see it being something that like I would read it. Like it seems very exciting in that way. Though I was going to ask you like, is there someone that's like inspiring you to want to like play them? But I could also see it just like the story of a town and how it represents America. That'd be interesting. Kind of like a Brian Branson type thing. Is it Branson? Like the like the Walk in the Woods guy who like does like these travel log type things. But instead of like an area, it's like a area and then in time. That'd be really interesting. Like because you have all these minutes and then you have the newspapers. You can like show a generation of people being Masons and how it affects their area, especially like Masons in and of itself. I think it'd be pretty exciting. Like people be like, you know, the hidden treasure of the Masonic, the Plainville Masonic group or whatever. You know, like I think that would be a big hit.
No, it's to me it's fascinating because I was building this place. It was like the mayor, both like the mayor during one period of time, I think 1921 to 1925 he was a Mason, and the planning meetings that they had were often hitting like at City Hall in the mayor's office. You know, if you go to City Hall, it's a beautiful building, and it's like whoa, you know. So it's just really cool because like a lot of the guys who really made this thing happen. And that's to me the story. Like that's the most beautiful story is like because you had to get everyone all on the same page. There was 2,000 Masons in the city of Plainfield in the 1920s. You know, so and they raised about $500,000 to actually build the building, and that's 1920s money. You know, so like that's a heck of a lot of money to be able to make this whole thing happen, and just to be able to work together and it's like to choose that like all right, well look, we're gonna go by this one thing and believe in each other. That's one of the things that's most beautiful to me about Masonry is like, it's like, all right, well, it's not about who's right, who's wrong, blah, 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 or anything like that. It's like, we're here to achieve a goal. And if we're trying to build a building or whatnot, like that's a really big thing, you know, let alone like a nice, beautiful building, right? It's so easy to be able to like, whatever, tear it apart or for it to not happen because it's just easy to like, for people to argue over stupid stuff. But to be able to like show that like this place, the actual building itself was like a monument to how working together you can make something happen in the midst of really almost the Great Depression, you know?
Yeah, I can see it. And I also am wondering to what extent, I don't know if you can answer this question, but like to what extent this research is coinciding with your desire to renovate the building in the sense of like national treasure. If I'm like wink, wink, nudge, nudging this, is there like maybe some minutes about something and it's like, oh, maybe I should like replace this wall. Sounds like it might be hollow. Needs some replacement insulation.
Definitely. So opening these safes has been like one of the interesting things, you know, like don't get me wrong. I know there's been guys before me who've opened them, but how long ago, you know?
Yeah.
No, it's really cool in that sense because I don't know. They'll write about everything, right? They'll be like, all right, well, this is where such and such and such and such, right? But then it gets moved or what have you, you know, like, or they'll forget about it in some of the minutes, you know, they're like, oh yeah, we were supposed to have this meeting. And I'm like, you don't see that meeting, you know, or what have you know, or they hired one person to do something, but then someone else ends up doing something. It's like, well, whatever happened to person A, you know, and they don't mention what happened to these things, right? So, I really think a lot of the treasure is actually the stories of how they made this stuff happen. Like, to me, that's the real treasure of the whole thing, because that's telling the real story of like, how do you imitate or how do you replicate that? You know, it's the same story. Like the process that we're in right now to restore this building is like the same process that they were in 100 years ago. You know, and so anything that we're upcoming, you know, I'm like, all right, well, guys, we just have to look at what did they do, you know, because they face the same problems. All right, we got to finance a building $500,000, or we're going to come up with that money, you know, or whatever, you know, or we have to hire these people or those people or whatever, right? Like insurance, all those things are there, you know. How did they think about these things? Where did they go? What did they do? They have all of the letters, even of like every single organization that they reached out to. So that's the other, really, it's just the blueprints, you know. They literally left us the blueprints on how to make this place.
I wonder, when you take the lessons from the past, you apply it today, and you have such a canvas in that town. I wonder if you'll stop at the building. You know, like I could imagine you seeing the town with these beautiful buildings but decrepit and think, you know, why don't we restore the town? That'd be pretty interesting. No one's done that in the history of the Masons. You know, that'd be kind of cool too. Like bring it back. Like, because Detroit's having a renaissance right now too. Detroit, they've been demolishing buildings and like letting farmland and agriculture come where it is. And actually, the downtown's one of the nicest places now. The last I've been watching like this little docuseries on it. It's really cool. So I could see something like that happen in Plainville. And like, you know, like you never know what the seeds of what you're doing. Like when I look at people when I interview them, I always wonder like 5 years from now, what could I see Akash doing? And I could see like, you know, if I fell into a coma, I wake up. And I come and visit you, it's like, this street, this is what it used to look like. Here's the picture. I started, you know, with that conversation we had with you. I can see something like that. That'd be pretty cool, though. I mean, the building itself is really cool. I just was thinking, like, would Akash stop? And I'm like, I don't know. It sounds like the town might be a good canvas for storytelling.
Definitely, 100%. And each building tells a story. You know, I was. Yeah. Who told me this? It was kind of recently too. They were like that. Architecture is stationary music. In other words, you look at a building and it like evokes music, you know, it tells a story through music, you know. I was like, oh, that's really cool. I actually really like it. Especially when you look at beautiful architecture, right? This is a neoclassical style building. And it's literally one of the reasons why I joined this place was I looked at the building and I'm like, that is incredibly beautiful. Like, I don't know what it is, but I want to be here, you know. So to be able to spend a lot of time here and whatnot is quite, it's truly pleasurable to just be in the presence of, because it's inspiring. You know, when you're in the presence of something that's inspiring, it feeds you, you know. And so also, so who knows, maybe I'll become a developer, you know. I've done the acting thing, I've done this, I've done that. Now I'm developing. Who knows, you know, but this will be a great case story or project. I'm like, all right, well, I've done that, I've been there, I've done that, I know how to do it, you know. But the other part of it is like, it's so important to get involved in the community. I mean, that's one of the I'm the community outreach chairman, and I've just been like hitting up every different, been going to the library, making sure that our presence is made there, going to City Hall, hanging out with people at different festivals and whatnot, like giving out whatever, water bottles, you know, and just different things, like donating to the kids of Plainfield, like to give them backpacks because some of them don't have backpacks, like all these different things. It's like you just get out in the community and you're that person who's like, all right, well, I've got plenty of stuff, I've got enough, you know, like let me help you out, you know. And it's not just let me help you out, here's a backpack. It's like getting to see examples of like what does it mean to be a person who's able to do that. It flips switches in people to remind them that like, oh yeah, I don't have to be someone who takes from the world all the time. I can truly give of myself, and that's the person who's really abundant and wealthy, is the one who's able to give, not the one who's just getting paid all the time or whatever it is. You know what I mean? So it's really cool.
I think I have two thoughts on what is one. It's like the trajectory would almost be Arnold Schwarzenegger, where he was like doing acting, he was doing real estate and developing and stuff like that, and then he went like did really great in acting again. But at the same time, it almost feels like I don't know if you could ever leave that town. Like the integration of you into like all these different things. Like I think a lot of people are so disconnected from the environment. Like you go to New York or you go to like a different city, like that's a different texture. Like,
Mhm.
what I would love to do is just like travel America and find like the local nerd, like the local no offense, but like local like Akash, who's like really integrated, and just like show me the beauty of this town.
Oh,
Show me the part of the town like nobody knows, and I would like record it, like do an interview there. I think it'd be a lot of fun. But it seems
easy.
like this is like I
Yeah,
don't
easy
think
thing I would say to do that. And I only got connected with this person recently in the city of Plainfield, at least. Visit the historical society of the area, or the genealogy society. They will tell you, this is like hanging out at the library. I was working with a genealogist because I was doing some research on the different people. They know everything about, like, you want to know a history of a town, you meet with the local historian in the library if they have one, or the president of the historical society if they have one, or you meet with the genealogist, because those two people can tell you what went down in this town, how it went down, who's who, everything. So that might be someone for you to look into, or maybe even your own local area. Hook up with these people, and I'm telling you, they'll tell you some stuff. They know what's up and how things happened, and so on and so forth. It's really cool.
Yeah, I've thought about just like a quick aside on like projects on my end. I've thought about, like there's hot ones, like the guy who has like people eat wings. I've thought about like what if it's like, I like tea, but I wonder if you could have an interview where you go to someone's home, or like you go to a place like a neutral location and you have an interview where you have that person teach you like their favorite meal while you're having an interview at the same time. I think that'd be fun. Or like you could because there's like so much texture to that. And I think that sometimes it's hard for people to relax and feel safe in sharing who they are, especially when they're having like tens of thousands of people that they know. Like if anyone, like I like that, like sometimes people that come onto my show and they don't research it at all, so they have no idea, like they're about to get like bombarded. so they just like, then afterwards, like, how many people listen to this? I was like, oh, you don't want to know. Just go home. Just go home. You don't want to know. But so I think I'll have to check those out because I think that'd be a lot of fun. Also, I'm like trying to have fun with formats as well. But do you see yourself ever leaving your town? Like I'm very curious because I can't imagine, like, I'm sure like go explore, try new things, but it just feels like if I'm you, I imagine just how good that must feel to give a kid a backpack and then 3 years time see him in high school or some other period helping out in a different way, like seeing that, like paying it forward. I feel like that'd be really hard to replicate anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, I would not. I don't know, right? Like, I don't want to say one thing or another because I don't want to limit myself to. All right,
yeah.
But I could see myself in some way really settling down in this area and just making this my place. But then I could also, I don't know where life takes me, and I don't want to make a decision on that. I think regardless, the study that I have endeavored here in the city of Plainfield to the best of my ability, and largely specifically through the Masonic Temple, I've been able to really get a good sense of how does a community grow and thrive, and what does it take maybe for a community to grow and thrive, aside from location and all these different things, all these external factors. Like, what's the essence of a place that really enables it to grow, become something more than it originally was anticipated to be, and to really blossom, And then on the same token, what causes it to wither, because so it's a really, really interesting case study. And I don't know, there's like, I love history, that was one of the things that, like, one of the things I found is a lot of Masons are like history nerds, like level 10,000, and not just like local history, but like they'll look at biblical history, whatever, like history in general, and it's really, really cool because you start talking to, I'll talk to a lot of these guys like, oh, hey, this is how things were. And I'm like, really? Were they that way? Because I'll like go through the minutes and stuff. And I'm like, oh, maybe not. Like, I'll talk to like guys from their 80s and they're like, oh, yeah, blah, blah, So it's like, how do I verify what are they saying, right? The anecdotal evidence with the actual true evidence that I have, like the writing, what I mean? Or things like this, because like I was talking about, a lot of things are written in between the lines, and being an actor, right? Like, that's one of the things you have to pick up on when you get a script, for example. You got to read between the lines, or whatever it is, even if it's your financial. I don't know, when I was working like interning as an investment banking analyst, like, to read between the lines of the company's balance sheet or their income statement or what have you. You know that more than anyone, being an entrepreneur. It's like, all right, well, yeah, you guys look good on paper, but what's really up? You know what I mean? That doesn't really mean stuff, So like, that's I think the one of the most important, like, skills, if you will, just for any human being who's discerning, you know, to get a sense of like what's up or what's really going down or what's really happening. Yeah, between the lines, I think is so important.
There was a person who wanted to come on the show, and I had a pretty good idea that they were going to make a bunch of claims about their business. And so I was like, hey, can you just like give me some, like you can redact as much as you want, but can you like give me a balance sheet or something that you have? Like just show me that there's any basis for what you're saying here, just so I know you're not full of shit. And I was like, you can redact as much as you want, you know, because I'll like you give me a little bit, I'll get the rest. Like I can inference it out. And they were like, how about we just have the show? It's like, no, like because I don't want to like ever have someone. I don't want to ever have like a swindler or something. I like people who can like, if they're coming on, I don't care if like it's a weird thing. If they're just genuinely loving the thing and they're sharing it, I don't mind that. And if there's like basis to it, but if they're like just coming to like kind of fluff and try and like cause people to have an interest and then that becomes their business, I don't want to do that. Like that's kind of boring. But I'm wondering for like I've seen a lot of NIMBYs of like both persuasions, like not in my backyard, people of like Republican and Democrat, like all types. And like I actually have been really getting into reading the minutes of the different towns around me, of like the local. So there's one that was being developed, and it was something out of like the most silly movie you could think of. They were like, "Hey, we're gonna build some new houses, and it's gonna be really good. Like, there's gonna be really nice houses, and it's like a really small town. Like I think I got it. I have like a bunch of notifications, and I got it, and it's a really small town, so they were going to add like 10% more houses, because like they need more houses, right? And they're like, it'll be kind of like this place nearby. It'll be kind of like, you know, Akash Town. And they're like, we don't want to be like Akash Town. It's just like there's so many people that showed up just to be like, we don't want to be like that. We don't want to be like that. And it was just like they were literally coming through. And the most beautiful thing is, you could get the newspaper too, like you're saying, and the newspaper would try and paint the idea that they need towns as like a bad thing, like, and these developers who are trying to like trick us by putting in like these special handicap swing sets for kids that would move here, they're like really bad. And then, you know, people didn't want them, you know, it's like all like they're like really trying hard to make them look bad because they don't want like any change in their backyard. And so I always wonder, when you have like the history of a place, especially the Masons, I think one of the nice things, if people think about Masons other than like National Treasure, it's like it's a group of people that like to build. They're kind of like a Habitat for Humanity. Like you guys like to do things in your community. You like to see things change for the better. And so, how do you change things for the better when you have all these NIMBYs saying "not my backyard"? Like I was reading about like someone trying to put in a sidewalk on a road near a high school that all the kids walk on, but there's no sidewalk, and everyone was like, they were basically saying like, "Don't chop down the trees. We don't need no sidewalk." And like literally, that was like a quotation. My favorite one is literally like, "We don't want to be like a Akash Town," but because you could just imagine that person's face. But yeah, have you seen stories or elements as you're restoring the building of like how they were even able to build the building? Maybe there wasn't intransigent back in the 1920s, 1930s, but I always wonder like how do you combat that?
So what I've noticed that this building is actually a great case study. So 1921, or 1911 was the first time that I saw in meeting minutes from one of the organizations that was responsible for building this building, that the idea was even floated that like, hey, we want to build a building, right? So one of the lodges, and a lodge is just a group of guys who form a lodge, and it's just like a organization, right? So this building at one time had 4 lodges. I mean, it's 4 different groups of guys who, whatever, set this book, whatever, right? So one of the lodges was like, hey, we want to build a building. Like, we want to build a building. And every other lodge was like, ha, good luck, you know? So nothing happened for 10 years. Then almost literally like to the month, 10 years later, the idea was circulated again, you know? And they were like, maybe. So one of the other lodges was like, we're going to form an organization, like an entity, a realty association, where we're going to buy up this property. And they made an offer, they bought the property, and now they own, it was a house at the time. And then they were kind of in the business of landlording a house to a guy, you know, but they didn't have nearly enough money to like actually finance building a building, you know? So 5-6 years go by, that was in 1921. So 1921 to 1927, or 26. They're thinking like, shit, now we have a house where this like business, this house needs to be restored if we're going to really do anything. But it's like, that's not what we're here to do to begin with. So like, what do we do? Right. So at one point they're like, you know what, just fuck it, sell the house. We're just going to whatever the proceeds are. Everyone who they use bonds, they subscribe, they use bond subscribers to like finance the whole thing. So everyone was to get paid out, you know what I mean? And then there's like it just changed, you know. It's like, well, the president of the organization, it's like, look, I'm going to get an architect from one of the local places. He's going to put some plans together. And then they get a big architect from like New York City. He gives some plans together. He was doing a lot of buildings in Plainfield at the time. And then they take those plans, they give it to the bank. The bank's like, yeah, we're willing to sign off on this to actually finance it. So before you know it, they actually get financing for this thing. And now they start doing their thing. But one of the other lodges wasn't included in that whole thing. But they were like the oldest lodge, you know what I mean? So like that was like the one, whatever, right? And they were the ones who originally had the idea to start like building a building, right? So like they didn't sign on for the longest time, whatever, but the new guys needed to like get these old guys to sign on, because you need to subscribe this to like all of the people or the Masons and Plank. You can't just have like 500 people do this thing. You need all of the numbers in order to really make it happen, right? So what I kind of found, answering your story using this as like a case study, and you kind of constantly just keep going at it, going at it. It's like you introduce the idea, and just that initial like response or like that shock value or whatever, it's like you have to let people express those feelings and go through those feelings, you know. It's not like, I don't think we're not supposed to repress them, right? And I think that's one of the biggest problems, is that like we're like, oh, someone else shouldn't have an opinion about something. It's like, no, like everyone should have an opinion about this. I just shouldn't have a problem if someone has an opinion that might conflict with my own. You know, that doesn't mean anything. They're seeing things from a different perspective. And I need their perspective in order to see the true perspective of really what's going on, right? So it's I think that's one of the most important things, actually. Is like, allow people to have the emotions, right? There's nothing wrong with having emotions. Actually, that's what makes us human. But really, if we want to get past something or solve something or really endeavor to fix something, we have to be willing to really hear each other out, and like you were talking about earlier, treat everyone as the same, you know. Just because they might be a landowner, whatever who they are, it doesn't mean shit, you know. You're another person, I'm another person. Even if you're just some schmuck, you know, well, you got an opinion. I might not agree with it, it may not be valuable in my eyes, but I have to assess it for some value and merit, you know. And I can write it off, but there is a necessity for it to some degree, you know. And I think that's one of the biggest things, that like there's just a lack of respect for other people and differing views and opinions in today's age, you know, which we see on Capitol Hill and just all over the country, you know. So
yeah, I've long wished that there was, well, right now, like all this AI stuff, for instance, and it's just it's set up the exact same way news is. News isn't about the truth. AI, machine learning is not weighted for the truth. It's the probabilistic response that they think that you want, and that's what the news is. And the news has determined that people like negative, because that's what really, you know, gins them up. And so it's really it's like an extrapolation of the same principles. Like, we're not, like, the way we ingest information is not based on truth. And I think I've talked to a lot of people, like, how do you have like a truth engine, like a way to weight the truth? Because, like, you know, AI essentially, like the machine learning stuff, it's not really AI. I don't know why. I think people overuse it. I've had AI companies on the podcast, and I've literally asked them, what's the AI component of your startup? And they're like, no, it's just statistics and machine learning. It's like, okay, well, you know, I understand why you're saying AI now. You want to raise money. But it's literally just, if you have like, I'm going to go across, and there's literally just, it's probabilistically looking at the sentence and saying like, it's probably, and they weight it based on the fact that they've aggregated so much information off the internet. And then done like statistics and all these things on it. That's all it is.
Yeah.
I do wish there was an element of like, how can we weight towards truth and then like account for bias? And then I've had thoughts on this, but I really wish there was like a service or some type of like if Twitter or something was like that, I think it'd be really good, or like really interesting to see like truth. And then you can like scale it. Like, how much, like, if you know you're the person that if you see one negative thing, you'll get fired up, right? But if the news gives you 9 negative things, like, you're gonna be like neurotic, but it's not actually that bad in the world. Like, you know, like, we're in the safest time in history and stuff. But you could say it's like, okay, I'm willing to have like one of the 10 bad things go through, because I want to have an accurate representation of what actually is going on and stuff like that. So you can like scale it. Like, I want like full truth or like chaos. anarchy. You know, like you can like wait, like have like a very personalized thing. I'm anyone who's out there working on that, please contact me because I would use the crap out of that.
That is cool.
Sometimes you just want chaos. Sometimes you just want chaos.
Oh, of course, yeah. Well, that's the thing. As like human beings, we appreciate like drama. Why do you think people watch like TV shows and whatnot, or what's the whole purpose of entertainment? Like people want, like that's part of being human, is experiencing emotions, anger, fear, joy, everything in between. That's like what we enjoy, you know, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's part of being human.
I think if you're ever out in Chicago, I'll show you the lake walk. The lake walk basically exists because one person just kept suing the city.
Okay.
And that's why there's like that. Yeah, there's like a huge documentary on it. Well, not a documentary. It's like a walking tour while they talk about it. You can watch online, but it's called literally Chicago Lakefront, the history of it, and it's really interesting to learn about everything that's going on. But if you're ever in the region, I'll show you around. I also will learn it with you because I haven't seen all of it.
Yeah, no, I remember I've been to Chicago, I want to say at least once. And the architecture in the city of Chicago is amazingly beautiful. Like truly,
yeah, it's interesting.
Beautiful. But I don't remember if it was the lake. I don't remember. I remember something like that, but I didn't ever go on it, but I do remember hearing about it or different parts of it.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's just interesting because like one person. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I wanted to hear about some of the stuff that you've been up to recently.
Yeah, I'm working on new projects for the podcast, as some people are aware of. I'm trying to do like in-person things where like I go out and like we'd have this conversation in person, because there's a lot of this that we don't get. Like if we were in person, I think like we would have to like we'd sell tickets to it, and not like that we would like have a cage match over it, but I think it would be like such a popcorn worthy thing. Like we would just have fun, but there's like chaos there that you get by being in person. So I'm looking at doing those. There's there's like 3 million people around me, so I feel like that's probably, you know, an easy thing to do. And then I'm working on doing like these dirty job-esque series that are like 60 to 90 minutes. But it's not just professions, it's also like ideologies and lifestyle. So like people in BDSM or like a Republican in like the heart of a Democratic like a Democrat city, like Chicago, for instance. I think there's more things that make people similar than dissimilar. I think if you just listen to them talk about their life and see it through their eyes, it'd be really interesting. Like, for instance, like what's it like to have like chronic anxiety to the point where there's a lady when I was going to college that would just run from one classroom to the next, and people would make fun of her. And I was like, well, why is she doing that? Like, I doubt that she's ignorant of the fact that people are making fun of her. Like, I doubt she's like getting her jollies off for it, but maybe she's into it. I don't know. But it was anxiety, right? And so imagine like following that woman through their day, seeing what it's like, and then having like interspersed an interview where she explains what it was like when she was at that red light, when she was in front of that door, when she saw 4 people walking her way. Like all those elements that you don't know when you look at the people around you. I think with that texture and context, it'd be really fun. But those are some projects I'm working on right now as it relates to the podcast. I'm also looking into the Incan Empire, because no one's written about it, and it's like the largest empire that ever existed on the face of the planet.
So my name, Akash Inti, right? That's my given first name. So I'm half Indian, half Peruvian. Akash is like from Sanskrit. It means like ether, sky, ether, right? And then Inti is the sun god of the Incas. So I'm half Peruvian as well. And so it's interesting. It's really, really interesting because I agree with you. A lot of stuff was like kind of lost, if you will. So I would really be curious on whatever research you're doing in that realm. I would very much be interested in learning more about myself. So
I can give you 2 factoids right now. One is the Incas are the only society in the history of mankind that wiped out hunger. Like they completely wiped out hunger. Like there was in Rome, they had the dole of grain, but there was still hunger. Like you would still starve. In the Incan Empire, they had an emperor, and they had no currency because it was all just like the emperor says go here, the emperor says go here. They had very like kind of like autocratic, but not really. But so their way of currency was prestige, and they got prestige by overabundance. When the conquistadors came over, they had literal houses, like storerooms of shoes, of bracelets, of food, And it was like, we don't need them, but they're here when we need them. And it's like, look how good of a production we did. Look how good we did here, and stuff like that. So they wiped out food, like hunger, completely, which is huge. And the second thing is, most people think when the conquistadors came over that they had like these great technologies and that's why they won. It's not how they won. Disease basically did 90% of the work. Right. But they didn't have the best technology. The metallurgy, the smithing of the Incas was as good. And actually, there was a lot of stuff that they found that was more intricate, and they couldn't even figure out how they did it. Like, it was that level of craftsmanship. But the way that their technology was more fiber-based. So they would have armor based out of fibers. And so when the conquistadors came over and they tried out these fibers, they had bridges made out of fibers. Like these huge suspension bridges made out of fibers. And the conquistadors were so scared to go on them because they're like, they can't hold up their horses, we're going to die. But they could because they're so strong. They had vessels the size of like the Inca... like the Columbus ships, they had those size just made out of fibers and reeds and stuff. But the technology was so good as armor that the conquistadors would literally take off their breastplate, the metal, the technology that they came with, and would put on the Incas because it was so much better than theirs. So like the Incas, if they weren't like completely depopulated by disease, would have probably built something that was like that would rival China. We would have had like because they were consolidating down through like moving people around, kind of like communist China used to do, like move people around for like economic benefit, and what Russia did, and they were in the process of like solidifying that. So if you gave them a little bit more time, maybe they could make that transition, maybe not. But if you gave them more time, it would probably have had like a China, like an empire level China thing in South America, and that's a huge different ballgame. Like Argentina at one point was as big as economically as America, but then it had a lot of corruption. But those are two factoids.
That's really interesting.
Fiber and food.
I remember reading that a lot of so Incas didn't write down history. I think they used knot tying, if I remember correctly. So like in order to send messages, they would have runners like run messages from one place to another. But the way that they would communicate the message was based on the ties of a knot, So it's tough to it was almost like if I think of it in like the whole biotech sense, it's like they were just using like RNA, you know what I mean? Like, all right, here's the message, you know what I mean? Like, that's it, it's like, boom, versus like, I don't know, ancient Mesopotamia where they're like literally carving into stone or whatnot, I think there's like this.
Clay tablets.
So, interesting.
Well, I recently had a guy on here who talked about religious wars in the Americas and elsewhere, and we talked about indigenous Americans. And we talked about the book 1491, which I'm literally looking at over there. But in the book, they talk about a group of Native Americans that were in this area and they were like, oh, we're seeing like primitive man. Like this is what it was looked like in the Paleolithic era because they had no clothes, they had no property, they had no different things, all these different stuff. And then they went and they publicized it, and that's kind of where like the noble savage, all these different concepts came from. Like, that's what they're alleging. But the interesting thing is, they weren't indigenous to that area. They actually fled from the north to that area. And actually, when you look out, they were in the ruins of a massive city, like a curated environment where they had like fish ponds and terraced environments so they could make as much food as they want. So these people like came into a New York, a desolated New York that was overgrown with all these different things, all this different stuff. But because they were so like they survived so many apocalypses, they didn't remember that it was a city. So they were living in the shadow of a city that was engineered for the benefit of a populace, and they had no idea how to use it. They just were benefiting from some of the engineering. But they were like completely, I think that's just wild of an idea. Just imagine your civilization being so so destroyed and so messed up that you could walk into New York City and not know what it is. You can see the Chesapeake and think that that's just what you have. But it's almost like your will is so broken. I think that's a crazy thing that happened in that period of time. Like imagine like 80% of the people dying. Like the culture, the wise people, the Masons type of groups that preserve the information, they're all gone. Like the Aborigines in Australia, they have a verbal history of the world that can be corroborated with carbon dating. They can look at the CO2 levels and stuff and corroborate it with some things that they said. It's like a 40,000 year history is verbally remembered in the Aborigines of Australia. So like what things have been lost with societies with history? And then America's, I think it's just it's rife for a rediscovery and appreciation, especially in America. Like people in the U.S., people really don't give it the respect they deserve.
Well, and I think that's like a hugely important concept, right? Like this whole idea that like history as it's been told to us isn't complete, or it's spotty. You know, like I don't know, I took world history when I was in college and in high school, and you learn whatever, obviously learn about America, which was being founded like 1700s and beyond. We got a good sense of like, okay, what really went down. But like really before that, like, yeah, Europe will say that they got like the 1000s and whatnot, but like they kind of don't, you know what I mean? And so like we only really have like a few hundred years of history that we really know and understand, and even that's like spotty, you know what I mean? So I don't know, it makes me really fundamentally question. And like, yeah, we have, I know there's the Bible and there's all these ancient texts and whatnot, but people like question and so on and so forth. But I think there's like a real fundamental lack of understanding on the of really what happened in the world. I mean, that's what a lot of archaeologists and paleontologists and what have you, like everyone still argues about it to this day, like, oh, was this real, was this not real, or whatever. There was always constantly coming out with new discoveries. I'm like, oh, well, we're totally wrong on this idea, or we're totally wrong on this fact, you know, or theory, if you will.
Yeah. But another interesting factoid, if you want me to continue my role, is
Sure.
Mesoamerica had a population density greater than any other place on the planet.
Wow.
There are more people in Mesoamerica, you know, like per square mile than anywhere else. And you're probably familiar with like the Teotihuacan or like the Aztecs, for instance.
Right.
Yeah. Well, technically, it's actually called the Triple Alliance, and the main one in Mexico City is called the Mexica, which is where like Mexico and all these other things get their name. But if I were to ask you, what do you know about the Aztecs? What is like the big bad thing that people used to describe them as? What would it be?
I would say that they killed for human sacrifice.
Yes, they did do that. Okay, but
Wow.
if you actually look at it from a number standpoint, in England over the same period of time I'm about to mention, the 1491 makes this parallel that England killed like 70,000 people through corporal punishment or what have you reasons, and over the same period of time with more people in that region, the Inca only killed like 3,000. So they're actually more humane, weirdly enough. Like more humane human sacrifice for public good, which is kind of funny, is like a unit of measure.
Gotcha. Well, I guess it was the way in which they did it was probably like, because it was like, I mean, but maybe not, you know, like when they would
They cut their hearts out.
yeah, when they have hangings though, it's like the same type of thing, you know. So I guess not, you know.
Yeah. So to answer your original question, the Incas are really big on my mind right now, and the 3 different ways to like experientially learn about the world are things that I'm very interested in.
I like that whole idea of like you were talking about like interviewing someone in the midst of something. I've always found that like I haven't done it for like I've been recorded or anything like this, but like you were talking about, like that is some of the best way to get to know someone. Like for me, for example, with girls, one of the things I like to do is I like to bring them through different experiences. You know, like, all right, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, we're going to do that. And it's going to be things that like I would do regardless of my day. Like I would totally bring a girl, all right, we're going to we're going to the Masonic temple today. I got to go through the archives. You're going to help me out with something like that, you know? And like when you do something that you really love or whatnot, especially as a guy, like there's something irresistibly attractive, like seeing a person, like a guy do what he loves to do to a woman. That's just like, forget about it, you know? And I'm like, all right, well, let's go get ice cream because I want to get some ice cream afterwards or whatever, right? I feel like walking in the park that's close by too, you know? Like those are things that I would do myself, you know? It's not like I'm using myself to be someone else, to pretend. It's like going back to the whole being honest. It's like, well, this is how I spend my day, you know? This is how I'm going to spend my time, you know? And when someone's really passionate about something, or really cares about something, it's you can tell, you know, it's irresistible. So.
And there's the social component as well. You're interacting with other people, so you can kind of see like sometimes people are like basement dwellers, and you can't really tell. And there's nothing inherently wrong with basement dwellers, but like a lot of people looking for a partner want someone who's gonna bring them somewhere for some reason. You know, like either on an adventure. I think like in my mind, I think like a lot of relationships, like girlfriend, boyfriend, etc., partners in that way. It's like you're trying to build a future together, and so if your present isn't all that appetizing, it's hard to sell them on a future. And so if you bring them to the Mason Lodge, it's like, I'm a part of the community, and look at me interact with all these people a big thing is like people look at how you treat other people, right? And so they're getting a lot of those elements too that I think they would also enjoy. It's like, how you treat the server. I think so many people know how you treat your server. That's like, it's not, I don't think it's as telling, like, oh, I really like you, Debbie. I read your name. It's like it's a little fake because like people know to be mindful of it, but there's a lot of subtlety in subtext. Like, I don't think you can convince, the huge lodge to treat you a certain way in advance. Like, hey, I'm having a girl coming over, like, blah, 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 right? Like, you can you never want to do it. But from a woman's standpoint, from the woman's standpoint, it's like, she's getting to see how you're appreciated. If you're like a screw off and everyone's like, oh, here's Akash, they make comments about you. It's like they get a little bit more of that, a little bit more texture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do other guys see you? How do other people view you? Because that tells a lot about you.
Yeah. I think also it's just imagine going around town, you're just going for a walk with her, and like kids come up, oh, thanks for the backpack, Mr. Akash.
There's nothing like cooler than that, That's like, I think something like a lot of guys
that's superhero stuff
out on is like, you have to be integrated in your community. It could be, you could walk this is one thing I learned from one of my mentors, like you could walk the same exact path every single day and you say hi to everyone, and they don't even have to be anyone special, It could be like, all right, well, I'm saying hi to my neighbor, and then there's this guy at the corner store that like whatever, I buy like a piece of gum from the store or whatnot, but we always like have a little thing, whatever, right? But you go down that same route every single day and everyone knows who you are. It's like, okay, this person's actually social. Like, those are things that, it's so important to be social. It's, you can be a basement dweller and you could be on your computer all day and whatnot. And there's nothing wrong with that. But there is, like we were talking about earlier, you miss out on all of these other things, the chaos that you were talking about earlier. I'm like, oh, well, I have to, whatever, it's, I don't.
Yeah.
Interacting with the environment in and of itself is a part that tells something about someone,
Yeah. Are you and if this is like not a line to go down, just let me know. But are you still in the place where it's not like one girlfriend, it's like you got like a bit of a Genghis Khan harem going on? Is that still like where you're at? Or are you at the point where it's like, one's enough? My heart is full. I don't know. So not that there's a problem. Your heart could be full with 5 women. I don't know. You have a big heart.
I have a girlfriend right now.
Mm-hmm.
Said part of the thing that I've talked to her about, and this was from like the get, right? Is like, look, I'm a guy. You know who I am, right? Like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about like what I do and whatnot, right? So I've been clear with her, like, there is like a good chance that I will see other women and whatnot, and that's it, But I'm upfront about it, and I have nothing to hide about it. So this is how I feel. This is how I like am in this moment. At the same time, I appreciate who you are. I have a lot of fun with you. The time we spend together is very enjoyable, and that's that, So
yeah.
I don't know. That being said, I still do see other girls just from time to time. It's been a little while, mostly because I've just been really interested in the stuff that I'm working on right now. And I'm like, yeah, girls, whatever, fuck it right now. You know what I mean? But like,
yeah.
But it's, I don't know. That's something that still means something to me, and I'm still a man at the end of the day, and what have you, So.
Mm-hmm. There was a friend of mine critiqued the interview that we originally did, the first one, and they're like, why? Like, and I'm gonna say it like the meanest way possible, but no, like, I don't mean it the mean way, and how I'm about to say it to you. They're like, why would you have that person on and treat them so nicely if they like, do these things? It's like, and I said to the person, what is Akash doing wrong? Is he lying to these people? No. Is he being upfront with these people? Yes. Like in my mind, like when I was, commenting, I was talking back to the person, I don't see the problem. When people are like, when I got that criticism, I was like, I don't see the problem, because like if you were like a sleazy, like, car salesman, like, oh, go look it over here. It's like you were like, stealing someone's pockets over here. It's like, okay, I wouldn't like that. Like that wouldn't be nice. But like, right. The fact that you're 100% about it, like you give people like, hey, this is what I like, this is what I don't like, and everyone does the same thing for different reasons, right? Everyone tells them, this is who I am, this is what I respect, this is what I don't respect, this is what I like to do, this is what I don't like to do, right? Like, and I think that's perfectly all valid. And so as long as everyone's upfront, consenting adults, I like, for the life of me, I have to stretch my mind to see like what's the problem with it, because like you're a smart person, you figure things out. you're straightforward with it. I imagine the woman's very similar to this. And as long as she's like, if she raised the concern, like, hey, gosh, I feel a certain way about this, I imagine you'd hear her out and make sure that you wouldn't be like, you're stupid. This is who I am. Haha, I told you in advance. You'd be like, let me understand you. I want to, understand what you're feeling because I care about you. And so like that criticism, like, oh, why would you, whatever. I feel like, I don't to the extent like you get that in your daily life or like anyone ever makes that comment, but just for anyone listening or what have you, I just feel like, what harm? What are you doing? Who are you hurting? I don't feel like you're hurting anybody. Like all the consent, everybody has like a thing, I just feel like because like you're upfront about it, it's easier for people to like poke at it. And so I don't know. I normally don't like comment on what people comment on.
No,
but I just felt like, what's harm? What's the harm in exploring the world in the way you do it versus someone who's just like going to marry this high school sweetheart and be happy for the rest of life? It seems all equally valid under the sun.
So like one of the things I mentioned to her up front, and I'm just using it as an example because what have you, is like, this is not going to be easy, right? Like, and that's what I understand, right? Like someone else being like, if you really care about someone and what, how could you do that to them and whatnot? But then like, it's like you mentioned, it's like, I'm not being like, I recognize that like, yes, when two people are close together, the idea of them being with someone else can like be really triggering and can invoke jealousy, feelings of jealousy, or feelings of fear, deep-seated feelings of fears and insecurities that one has, about whatever, right? Like having a partner and whatnot, right? And so like I was up front at the get. I'm like, look, this is probably not going to be easy. Most of the girls that I talk to and hang out with, they just can't deal with it. They can't handle it, which is true in fact, and that's how I choose to live my life. And what you see is what you get, So like, but then you see all the other parts of me and like the things that I do and the person that I am. And it's like, well, there's also parts of me that are like really, I know they're really attractive, and I'm not talking about the physique, I'm talking about like the things that the person I am, right?
Yeah.
And so like, it's like, all right, well, I don't know. This person's really attractive. Yeah, they think about these things and they're going to make me challenge the way that I view relationships and I've grown up with them and whatnot. But like, that's up to that person. Everyone has their own prerogative. And so.
Well, it's also like moral. I like when we look in the past, there's like that moral relativism. Like, oh, if I was in that time, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't be that way. And even now, there's I think Islam, they have like a multi-wife system as well. And the Mormons have a multi-wife system. And so it's like, that's like a billion people. So 1/8 of the world's population are in your mind, inferior. Like, I think there's a level of like, that seems weird to me. That seems odd. Like, go ask, go learn. But to be like, why would you have that person on your show? He seems, like, that isn't like a good way to treat someone. It's like, how is he treating them wrong? Who is he hurting? Like, that's, I just kept asking. I was like, who is he hurting? It's like, I don't know. We're still friends to this day. The person who I'm mentioning, and they're probably going to listen to this. So so I wasn't mean about it, but it's like, I don't know. Like, I was recently talking to someone who, they're talking about patents. And if they're listening, I say what I'm about to say with love. But in the U.S., patents are basically, is it novel? Is it new? There you go. You got a patent. In the EU, is it novel? Is it new? And the moral element of like, is it good for society? And the person said that they really liked the European model because they have the moral element of like, is it good for society? And I asked this question, like, how do you justify that with the idea if you took someone from Europe, you took someone from the Middle East, and you took someone from Asia, and you sat them in a room, and you said, here's the patent, they wouldn't be able to agree on what's good because everyone has a different approach to what's good.
Right.
What's the priority of society and stuff like that. So in my mind, I love that aspect of humanity, that there's these different perspectives on how to go about life. Like there was a teacher of mine in college, I think, but he talked about how he was in the Middle East and he met someone who had multiple wives. And he's like, how do you do that? What's that like? Just like complete, earnestness, like no judgment. And I think that's the best way to ask someone a question. Like if you come in like, what the fuck's wrong with you? Like you're not, I think you'll probably be like, well, I'm about to have a fun conversation, but like, it's not like the best way to engender a good conversation. But so that they asked, how do you do this? And so the guy with the multiple wives, he said, I have 5 wives. I take care of every single one of my wives. They're completely taken care of. In America, do you guys take care of your wives 100%? Like how many husbands don't take care of their wives and stuff like that? So yeah, that's a different worldview, conservative, what have you want to describe it. But you can't argue with the fact that he takes care of his wives. It's a nice thing too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I completely agree. Like, how do you approach someone on a question is hugely important. For me personally, if someone with like a little bit of attitude when I'm saying something, like, all right, buddy, well, that's it. You're not getting your answer, because like the way you ask the question says everything. You already have your idea, whatever. So, all right, say whatever you want to say, whatever, right? Like, so I think that's something that again comes back to this whole like approach everyone with respect, right? Like, do you really want to know something, or do you want to just whatever get your jollies on asking a question about something?
Yeah.
If that's the case, well, I'm not your guy for whatever, right? I just don't put up with that type of stuff, which I know you don't either, right? But I agree with you. Yeah, there's a lot of things that like, yeah, like I don't know. You could even. I was reading something earlier today. It's like a guy will go to work, or let his girl go to work, and then have a kid, and then have the kid go be raised by someone else, and it's like that's kind of strange, right? Like, why would you go to work, and then send your girl off to work for some other guy, and at the same time hire some other person to take care of your child, right? And that's so normal in the United States, right? Like, countless stories that I've heard of that, but it's like, I don't know, to me that's a little strange, but then again, I've got a different background and so on and so forth, right? So all to say that like, everyone's got their own opinion, everyone's got different ways of seeing the world, and be open with what people are presenting to you, and understand that they've put a little bit of life experience into whatever they're giving you.
Yeah, sometimes I get these comments where someone says, one person said, why did you ask such a stupid question? And I will respond so calmly to it, and then they get kind of twitchy about it. If someone like kind of rude, like on some level they know they're being rude, and so I like if I'm in a mood to be entertained, I'll just respond like very calmly, and they get really twitchy really fast, and I'm like, I'm just having fun, like I don't care, because the thing is, maybe they'll give me something I didn't know. It's a little fun game for me. You never know what people teach you about yourself.
Oh, so, not at all.
There are times where I'll tolerate it for the wild ride of it. It's like a roller coaster, and you don't know what you got on, but you know it's about to be fun.
I appreciate that. I really do. I don't know. It's you never know what you're gonna get with people, and that's one of the things I tend to enjoy a lot. It's like you mentioned, find things out in ways that you could never ever expect.
One of the big things that has been a change, and I think we're getting to a lot of the big things that have happened. It does seem that the last 6 months of your life, it's been a big kick up. It went from you're doing construction in conjunction with acting, but it's if I were to guess, it'd be like it's almost like you're almost full-time acting, because like I'm seeing all these updates, like I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, and it's like it's almost I don't know if this is a thing or not, but it's like the strike is almost like, because I don't think you're a union or whatever, like it's like you get to like kind of grab all these great deals, but it seems like you're almost to the point where this could be like a full-time thing. From the outside looking in, that's what it feels like you're like going up a whole nother notch since the last time we spoke in terms of just your professional acting career.
Yeah, so actually on that note, it's funny enough that I haven't been doing too much acting work recently, at least in the past month. So in recent history, but a lot of my projects are like that I did like a year ago, a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, are like surfacing, and that's one of the interesting things is like I found is like, especially in entertainment, being an actor, it's like you could do something and then have no idea when it's going to show, like the I don't know, the person in me who wants like instant gratifications, like, all right, I finished my acting part, like where's the product? And it's like, well, meanwhile, like the editor has to do stuff, all the post-production work has to be done, and then whatever, and that takes time, right? Because people have lives too, so, and then financing issues sometimes or whatever, right? But some of the stuff it's just that I did it like 6-9 months ago or a year ago, and now it's surfacing.
Oh, okay.
And there's other parts of it that it's like it just kind of is surfacing all together, because I was doing a lot of projects at that particular time. Like it would be like in a month I'd be working on 3 or 4 projects. So that's part of it. But then also I guess I have been doing some, like I just started a show in the city of Plainfield, New Jersey, and that was my first lead role, as a stage theater actor, which I'm not too much into the theater stuff, but you want to be a good actor. One of my mentors told me, you want to be a good actor, you get on stage. So that was a really and that means there's something.
Yeah, I wish I was near New Jersey so I'd come see you act. Even if it's
So
on the stage. Yeah. I would,
definitely.
if there was like a part of it where like I could throw a tomato at you, it's like like break a leg. I would do that for you. I'd be that guy that says you suck, and then it's like all up from there. Like I'd set this expectations really low so you can really blow people out. I feel like I could be that guy. Like really like keeps everybody humble. I don't think anyone wants that guy, but I could do that for you.
I think that's important. I think it's
Yeah.
because everyone like will be like, oh, you're doing awesome and whatnot. It's like, no, be real with me. Like after rehearsal, everyone on the stage crew is like, oh, you're doing awesome. It's like, really? Because that role I like totally screwed up and whatever. Don't BS me. So sometimes I want to let myself a little.
Yeah, there was recently like a little like not clip, like a little, like there's a guy who makes comedy sketches. His name's Gus Johnson. He's up in Wisconsin, and he made this sketch of like drama kids up doing like they're like submitting themselves for opportunities. Yeah, I don't know what the term is. Okay, but they're doing that, and they're like, oh, I hope you get it, but you fucking suck. And like they're like all acting all this fake way, and that just sounds exhausting. Like I kind of like things to be as binary as possible, even though there's so much gradation in life, where it's just like I've ascertained that you will tell me the truth. Great. You seem like you're gonna lie to me. I no longer am listening to what you're doing. And like it's kind of like I filter things in, because the more, not like mentally lazy, but the more like straightforward you can be with certain people, the better the feedback is, and then you can use that mental energy to do more useful things versus just discerning if people are lying to you. Are they just like trying to kiss up? You're the leading role. You're the big man now, and they want, like, they see you going somewhere, and maybe they just want to attach themselves onto you as like a ringer. I was talking to a comedy person recently, and that's a big component of comedy. Is like this, like, evil networking aspect where it's like, who do you think is going to be successful? Then you have to like be in their group, because if they're successful, then they'll bring you up. So it's a little bit of like, are we friends with that person, or am I just kind of riding them up to a level so that I can knife them later?
So it's funny you say that, because I think that's in every industry. I noticed a little bit of that when I was working in biotech back in the day. I noticed that everywhere, in the pickup scene, everywhere, it's a little bit of like, you got some people who are a little fake and like just trying to jostle for status, if you will, right? Like exactly what you're talking about. One thing that one of someone I really look up to is Ray Dalio of Bridgewater Associates. He wrote a book called Principles, and one of his really core principles is this idea of radical honesty and radical transparency. In other words, that like, doesn't matter who you are, I'm just going to tell you the way it is, and that's it, right? But again, coming from the place of like, well, here's the reason why. It's not like I'm just doing this to be an asshole. It's like, no, the clearer I am with you and the clearer you are with me, the easier we can get at what's the truth of the matter. And so that's something I've adopted ever since reading a few years ago, about 5 years ago, in his book Principles. So
yeah, big fan of the book.
Oh, amazing. I remember when I was working in the corporate life, I would have those principles just like taped up on my walls, and I would just kind of like, I don't know, I like having things everywhere, just visually seeing them, because the unconscious mind is always working on stuff, so
Yeah.
it was really cool.
It's also there's like the sophistication of the candor as well. There's some people who think, oh, give me a candor conversation in it, and then they think, oh, I get to be a dick now. If you're coming off as a jerk, if you're coming off really abrasive, like, that's very unsophisticated. There's a sophisticated way to speak to someone in a candor way, where you're saying like, hey, here's some things that you can improve upon. Because like, there's a way to have that conversation where it's very smart. The person's going to hear you. They're going to be open to it. And in my mind, every word you say to someone when it's to that purpose of helping them should be to the purpose of helping them. And so if you're coming at it like really like low energy, low effort to just say, hey, you suck at this, you suck at this, you suck at this, what can you do with that, really? Like, that's amoeba level feedback. My head's hitting a wall, my head's hitting a wall, my head's hitting a wall. There's no sense of the object. There's no sense of like what direction you should be going. So I think there's also like that nuance that I think a lot of people get wrong. It's not, oh, I can be a jerk, or like say things really hard. It's how do you sophisticatedly talk to someone in a way so that they can hear what you're saying and know that they're going to take it in the right way, because you guys have that relationship. Because I think I talk to a lot of people, and I think a lot of people just get stuck at like, I get to be a dick now. Like, they get too excited about it versus like trying to think, how can I ensure that I don't waste my time with my suggestions and advice that I'm giving right now? because it's really easy to waste your time if you don't say it right.
Well, and one of the things I've actually learned on that one is
Mm.
a lot of it has to do with how do you talk to yourself. You know, the core of how do we deal with other people is how do we talk to ourselves, you know? So if someone's being a dick, well, that's probably like what they've learned and what they've conditioned and whatnot. And they haven't necessarily worked on that relationship with themselves. How can they talk to themselves maybe in a more loving way, in a more supportive way, in a way that actually gets them to do something and actually change their habits, right? Because the way we influence other people is really the way that we influence ourselves. You know, if I want to get someone to, I don't know, if I want to get my little brother to help me out with some scanning documents or something like that, well, how would I get myself to scan some documents, you know? And that'll start at least giving a hint as to what direction should I be using in my communication. And then the time I go with it too. So
I wonder to what extent like those techniques that you have are contributing. Like you said, like not 6-9 months ago, you did a lot of work, but you couldn't do that work if like you're a jerk. I think there's a level that people will tolerate you if you're just skilled, but then there's a level of like you'll go beyond if you're just a nice person to be around as well. So if you're talented and good to be around, like I think people want you to be around as well. And so I wonder to what extent like those skills that you have are contributing to your like seeming success of all these things coming out. Because not only are you being very like straightforward in who you're talking to, but they can be straightforward with you. And I think that there's only so much time in the day, so I imagine from my point, I'm guessing, but I imagine when you're like assessing projects, you give them that ping of, are you going to be straight with me? And if it's like, oh, this is going to be a bullshit type thing, it's like, well, if I have time, maybe I'll do it, But more, I think there's probably like some selection going on using these skills as well that's contributing to this. This wave that you're riding, yeah.
I would definitely agree to that in the sense of like, do I want to work with this person or not? I think that's something that's so critical and crucial, That in the beginning, it was just kind of like any project that came my way, do it, right? Just get the ball rolling a little bit, right? But I guess I'm a little bit more selective these days in terms of like, all right, well, do we want to work on something like that? Do I not? Part of me still just likes, just keep putting your reps in, and that's the way I approach it. I was looking at the career of Antonio Banderas, for example, and I think it was like 7 years before he hit his like first real like big Hollywood blockbuster type movie, But he was doing the thing for 7 years, So I'm like, all right, let me get my 7 years down and let me really really assess how's this thing going, I think that's the other thing. A lot of times, especially when people are pursuing a dream or what have you, it's like they eject too quickly, So but going back to the whole idea of like this whole being personable, I think I don't know, through time it just becomes a part of you, and I can't really assess is whatever is going on because of that or it's not. It's just it's integrated into my being at this point. But it's like whatnot.
Well, whenever I'm out, and you let me behind stage, I'll be that quality tester. I'll just observe how people interact with you. And then they won't think I'm watching them, and then afterwards, we're like, that person's being full of shit, and we'll overlap our instincts on different people.
What you were saying about like being that guy behind the scenes who's like whatnot. I was just the other day. I was at like a picnic for like hanging out with friends and whatnot, and I was talking to one of my other friends, and there was this other guy who was like clearly like inebriated, like beyond a reasonable doubt, And so like he would just say something like crazy or whatnot, and I would just go like. Like to my friend, like axe him, like kill him, I don't know. It made me laugh, I was like, that one, he's out, But
yeah.
As you were saying that, it's reminding me of that.
I think alcohol is kind of weird in how people use it. I think that Tom Holland recently came out and talked about how he used to use alcohol as like a social lubricant, and now that he is no longer like, it's basically like social anxiety he was suffering from. But yeah, I hear you. It lowers your inhibitions, and so it gives you a little different lens on how people operate. My God, the things people would say to, like when I was drinking with people in college, the things that they would say, it's like, why would you say these things?
Oh, yeah.
Like the things they would say about women. It's like, and they're wondering why they're chronically single. Like, what the fuck? It's like the things you think in your free time are gonna influence how, like, women, like the people you're interested in, can detect if you secretly don't like their gender. Like if you see them like in that way, like it's just gonna come across.
No, and that's one thing actually in acting, right? Is like your thoughts come across on the screen, right? So like when you're really getting into a character, what you're thinking, like you might not think like, oh, but it comes across in your body language. Your body language gives away a lot of different things. So that couldn't be more true. That's why I think working on our mindset and what do we really think about whether it be a specific subject area and you're working on like a research in a particular area of like a scientific discipline or whatnot. What's your take on how that whole thing works, and your mindset to some degree is so important, but just as much in how do you interact and relate to other people or anything in between, that's so important to continually work on, because it's like through time our mind is like iron, it gathers dust or gathers rust, so.
Yeah, that seems very true in my experiences as well. Like tying it back to like I'm gonna keep calling it the wave because it sounds cooler, but like the kind of the wave of all things coming out when a burst like this happens, I imagine more opportunities are coming your way, or is the strike really getting in the way of that level of like? It seems like if there was no strike, maybe like even more stuff would come from this.
So I don't know. So personally, I'm non-union, so strike doesn't affect me because I'm not like if I was union, non-union. It's non-union projects is independent of what's going on in Hollywood, So it hasn't been that it's like more or less. I will say it feels maybe that others that have like known me are like, oh shoot, he's actually doing this thing. Like versus like in the past, like, oh yeah, good job, like, yeah, you try that. Now it's like like there's a level of like he's actually making it happen, that I've been greeted with to some degree, or maybe some disbelief amongst like family, friends or whatnot, like, okay, like that's he wasn't just saying it, like he really means it, so I don't know if that really changes anything, but like that's how others perceive me, that's their perception. It doesn't really matter, like I don't know, just. But in terms of the actual work itself, I mean, I've just been like doing the reps, right? So my acting resume's got like 30 something credits on it in a couple of years. And this past year, this summer, really, I've kind of taken a back seat on it a little bit, just because I've wanted to focus on other things right now. Like I feel like there's the time to strike on other areas of my life, that's what I've been working on. But that doesn't mean that I'm not like all of the other stuff that I've done to date is still there, so and it's going to just keep coming out, like that's the cool thing is like I don't necessarily have to do anything, and still projects will continue to come out that I've worked on in the past, which is the way that it works in my experience, at least to date. So
yeah, but is there any other projects you're working on right now? I think we got the acting, we got the Mason, we have the book, which has been hinted at. I would like an ARC one's ready.
Yeah, that's a probably. I think this is probably going to be iterations over the next couple of years, at least. If I really want to get something really, really solid, I recognize that probably like 3 years probably 2 years at this point is what I'm looking at. Just to go through everything to some degree, at least at a cursory level, and then to start putting the story together in the proper order and whatnot. But I could be wrong. It could be sooner than that. I don't really know. Other projects though, I mean, those have been the big ones really recently. Obviously, the girlfriend too. I mean, I guess it's a project to some degree too, but I don't know, in the sense of like, working with her, right? Like teaching her what are my values, what are the things that I really, appreciate, care about, and so on and so forth. That's one of the ways that I see relationship is like, all right, I'm going to work on that too, It's a lot of it's by time, it's like in any field or discipline, in college, for example, you get a degree in something or so on and so forth. You just spend a lot of time in that whole area, right? Of like learning about it, and the basics of this, the basics of that, and whatnot. Continue to refine, and whatnot. Before you know it, you have something to show for it, right? It's the same type of thing. It's kind of the way I approach that with relationships. So, all right, like we'll work on this, we'll work on that, I'll show different parts of my personality. What are the things that I value? How do I spend my time over long periods of time? It's like, okay, well, she'll get a real good sense of like what's important to me, what's valuable to me, and what behaviors do I like, what behaviors don't I like, and that's all part of the training to some degree, for lack of a better word. Of like, how can she be a good girlfriend for me? You know.
And you a good boyfriend for them.
Yeah, you know. Well, and that's all part of the process too, right? Like, okay, well, so I'm like, okay, that stuff bothers her. Why does it bother her? Then I get to know about her a little bit more. What's really going on? What are some of the things that really trigger her? What is, you know, you get all of that in the process of everything. So,
are you on? Yeah, you're on Reddit. We met on Reddit.
That's right.
Yeah, which is crazy.
That is that's honestly the craziest things. I can't believe that. But yeah.
Yeah. I just messaged you randomly, and we're still talking 5 years later. But there's not new, but there's a subreddit called "Am I the Asshole?" where people describe scenarios and say, "Hey, am I the dick there?" It is like, as someone who likes the stories of people, there's such raw humanity there. Like, there's some stuff there. There's like, there's people that like abandon their wife, soon to be like almost wife, at the altar, and are now reaching back out, and now the wife's asking, am I the asshole for not wanting to meet with this person? Am I an asshole for wanting to meet with this person? And then there's like then they update it as it goes too, and you get like this really kind of community conversation. There's some wild humanity there. I'd recommend it. There's some crazy stuff there, but it's also just like sometimes it's sad, sometimes it's really bad. But there's always something there that I think, as someone who likes to learn about people, that's enjoying the history of stuff and the subtext, it's really refreshing to get, like recently someone was, like one example is like someone like got a house, and they're renting out to like their friend's brother or something. And then their friend's brother was like, hey, can I give the rent to the landlord versus you? It's like, I am the landlord. And the person got pissed and started like slamming the doors and like, how dare you take advantage? Like, how much mortgage are you going to have? You have like blah, blah, blah. And the guy was already getting like a third of what normal rent would be in the area. So the guy was like, am I an asshole for not being more clear on this or something? And then there was an evolving conversation where like some of his friends were like kind of like socialists or whatever. And he was like, some people said that I shouldn't be charging him at all, and he should live with me for free, and everything should be egalitarian and whatnot. And it's like, that's an interesting conversation. It shouldn't. He has to pay his bills. Like, why should he subsidize this guy's, life and whatnot? But that's I've been basically reading them all the time with my wife, and it's been a lot of fun. I feel like if you want an opportunity to see different aspects of people's value systems, I think if you were to go on there, sort by controversial, and then just like read them and ask her opinion, it's wild. Like, just the stuff there, it's fun.
I'll definitely have to take a look at that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, yesterday I read one with a guest on the show because I was like, oh, this is fun, and I do it all the time. So why not read it together, see what we think? And there's like, it was kind of fun. I don't know, it's like a little wooden on my part, but I like the idea of more like a philosophical conversation on life. Yeah, I think that'd be a recommendation for you, as well as the book On Working by Robert Caro. He wrote the books on Lyndon Johnson and the guy who helped build New York City. I forget the name, but the Power Broker. He talks about how he writes those big tomes, and it seems like as you're in the middle of a giant, opus, like it'd be a book that you recommend. But are there any books or anything that you recommend people check out, or at least me? I'm always looking for new things to learn and read about.
Yeah, I think right now, man, most of the reading I've been doing is just the minutes right now, honestly. So like that's check out the minutes of the Plainfield Masonic Temple. No, a lot of it's that's really what I've been reading right now. I really can't remember. It's just been newspapers from like the 1800s to 1900s to current day and all these types of things. I don't know. I saw actually my dad was watching this movie the other day. So I'm a film kind of guy too. Hacksaw Ridge. Familiar?
That's a good movie. Yeah,
I love that movie.
Life is crazier though. The real life. No, he kept going back. He didn't stop. He kept going back. He did more things. Like, apparently it was more. Mel Gibson said, like, if he did everything that the guy, like, showed everything the guy did, no one would believe it.
Really?
The guy's wild. Yeah, I'd look into it. It's really cool. But yeah, that's a good movie.
I was just blown away, man. I didn't watch it again with him, but he was watching. I'm like, Dad, that is an amazing movie.
Yeah.
And then I would also say just lots of staying in touch with higher power, prayer, all these types of things. I think it's super, super important. which that movie shows like that was one of the big things. That's one of the things actually I really appreciate about Mel Gibson, controversial as he is, if you will, is like how he puts a focus. Like that's something that's about like very important to him as an individual, and it comes out through a lot of the films that he's made in some way, shape, or form. Right, even in Apocalypto, for example, where it was like, okay, the gods were different, if you will, or higher power deity was different, but he still illustrated the like that theme or that concept and what it meant to him. So I don't know. I love Mel Gibson films and
Same.
So
I'm a big fan.
yeah.
Mel Gibson does not get the love he deserves.
Oh, I completely agree. He's brilliant. Well, truly brilliant in terms of like what he's put together, and I appreciate he's the kind of guy who's like, well, this is what I think, and that's what I think. You know, I'm not gonna kowtow to anyone because you want me to think this way. It's like, well, this is what I think, you know, and this is how I want it to be, you know.
Is there anything you're trying to learn? I guess this like might go back to the minutes as well, but since it's Learning with Lowell, I've been asking people, is there a subject material or thing in this world that you're curious about or actively trying to learn more about? Yeah, I mean, honestly, it sounds like it's gonna be the Mason minutes and understanding your local.
No, I mean that's part of it. I think always learning more about myself at the core. A lot of that is through relationships or with people, right? Part of it's through pickup and all that stuff. And that's the other thing, by the way. Like that's going just as like strong. Like I've been leading a few. I've been working with a mentor for now about 5 years, and he's like, "All right, you're going to start leading some of the classes now," you know, and that's kind of cool, you know. So I've been doing a little bit of that stuff. I just haven't put a lot of, I guess, spotlight on it because it's just so integrated into my daily routine now. You know, it's like, oh yeah, okay, I'm doing that, and but you know, it's like the things are like, oh yeah, I brush my teeth, right? I'm not going to mention on a podcast that I brush my teeth, right? Like,
yeah,
it's so second nature that it's like, oh yeah, I guess I do that, but I just didn't even think to mention it, right? So, which that's one of the interesting things, right? It's like that. I think, especially being an interviewer, someone who asks people like questions and whatnot, like the people who are doing things that are really, really interesting, like, oh yeah, I'm just doing that, but it's like no big deal, you know what I mean? Like yeah, that's what I think. It's one of the things that's always kind of formulating questions around like picking up on those things, right, reading between the lines and things that are really, really intensely interesting to the outside observer. How do you get at that, right? I think that's something that's which I think you do a pretty good job of, but
well, I appreciate it. I think you'd tell me if I did a bad job, which is nice too.
No, I really would, because we've pulled out a lot from me, you know, where I talk to that average person, whatever, right? Like maybe they're not as interested in that to begin with, but they don't get that, you know what I mean? So
yeah,
a lot of it's
been getting worse as I age.
Yeah,
my tolerance for small talk is getting worse. But I was at a party and a person was expressing something to me, and I was just like, it sounds like you don't feel good about yourself, like you feel inadequate, and that's why you've been avoiding these relationships. It's just like it went from like they're all drinking and have a nice time to like they're all staring at that person just to see what they say. It's like, oh shit, I can't be here anymore. Like I have a lot of like instincts on what's going on with people, and I used to just keep it to myself, but I've been saying it more, which is kind of fun. But have you been keeping up with Andrew Callahan to just talk about like the pickup artist and stuff?
I haven't spoken to him any time recently. I think the last time I spoke to him was probably that interview, maybe once I saw him in between, but no, it's trouble. A lot of like some of the things that you're doing, some of these ideas that you have, I could kind of like there's some parallels and some of the stuff that to some degree that he did, in the sense of like interviewing these kind of again, this was during pandemic and whatnot, like, but more non-mainstream types of getting non-mainstream types of viewpoints, you know, which was that even came back from talk about films or whatnot, or really interesting people. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Hunter S. Thompson, you know, he was this whole like, I'm gonna get experiential, like gonzo journalism, you know, that was Hunter S. Thompson. And you could kind of see Andrew Callahan like adapted a little bit of that, right? He's like, I'm gonna put myself in this thing and live it, you know. I'm kind of based on what you're saying, I'm hearing a little bit of that. Maybe you're gonna channel that in different ways, but like I can tell that there's a little bit of influence, if you will, from that, and homage, if you will, to even that era. So but
I'm a fan of his interviews. I was asking because he's in a bit of trouble now.
Oh yeah, no, I've heard. I've heard a little while ago. So
Yeah, there's two people that I've enjoyed like their content. I love to have them on and just talk about like the mental health aspect of what they're going through because no one ever talks about mental health. But
Yeah.
anywho, I know we're running over and I want to respectful your time. So Akash, I want to thank you so much for coming back on 6 months later or more, depending on when this goes up. I don't know what day it is anymore. But thanks for coming on the show, sharing your life and the secrets of the Masonic Order and the hints of the National Treasure epic that you've been going on.
Thank you very much. I'm lastly going to mention, I think I'm just doing this from my director, right? So there was a film that I was in, it was called Blood and Lust. That was selected for a couple film festivals. I think it's supposed to be in somewhere in September. So that was screened at a theater in Cranford, New Jersey just recently, and it's probably going to go up on Amazon or something like that sometime soon. So that's just like a little, all right, I was in that project. You want to see me in a film? I played a vampire in that. There you go. There was another project.
Look in the show notes.
Yeah. So another project that was selected for a film festival. One was like New York. The other one was Toronto. I don't know. I'll send you the details on the whole thing, and if you guys are interested in that, you can check it out. So that is
everyone watching, get interested and check it out. Tell me what you think, and if you didn't like it, we want to hear the candor version. But you should like it because I don't know. You're quite talented, in my opinion. I put like your real thing.
I remember that.
People liked it.
Yeah.
You're so raw.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I've got more footage that I don't know. I'll package it up again sometime soon and put it together of some of the newer stuff.